Hey, what's up guys? Travis here with Every Single Sunday, doing a little bit of a wrap up on yesterday's ride. Along with me here is my good buddy Bo Law, ready to ride Reynolds, based out of Phoenix, Arizona. So Bo put our route together yesterday. What we're doing is basically doing a wrap up, kind of just talking about the stock 500 versus the modified one, and the good, the bad, what things we think were better stock, what things we thought were better modified. So
yep.
We're going to talk about suspension. We're going to talk about engine characteristics, pegs, seats. I'm not going to bother with graphics, but we will touch on things like headlights because we did about 4 hours of night riding last night. So as we dive into this, was there one thing that stood out? I mean, out of all of that?
Well, for nighttime, there was definitely a big difference between my candle headlight and an actual real headlight. That one was the biggest difference. And then suspension. Those are my two top, biggest differences.
All right, so let's talk about suspension first. Bo's bike, 22 KTM 500 EXC. My bike, 22 KTM 500 EXC. Both started as the same thing, but they've been changed. My bike has the WP 6500 cartridge kit in it. Changed it to a closed chamber system versus the open chamber where the fluid is kind of floating around a little bit. The back of my bike has a WP reservoir on it, and then it's been resprung and revalved front and rear on my bike from Schmidt Performance. So let's go ahead and talk about it. What did you notice about suspension more than anything?
So right off, when I first hopped on his bike, I actually didn't quite like the suspension as much immediately just because I'm so used to such soft stock suspension. I've gotten used to how soft it is and learned to plan for it. When I first started riding his bike, I was like, oh shit, you're oh crap, it was hitting a lot harder at first, but then immediately I got so much more comfortable on this bike just because you start hitting things and you don't even care what you hit, before you got to plan for rebounding and stuff. But
yeah. So we're both big guys. He's 240, I'm 245 plus gear. The bikes are set up for 170, 180, so we're both way over the stock spring rate. But for trail riding, that stock stuff is nice and smooth if you're going slow. But once you start hitting stuff faster, you start going through it. You're already halfway through the stroke just sitting on the bike, so
yep.
Gives you the full range. For me, going to that system, it is noticeable when you start going faster. It gives you the confidence to plow through stuff. And if you take the stock suspension and revalve it and respring it, it works pretty good for single hits, meaning if there's one rock. But once you start hitting multiple stuff like bing, 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 bing,
that's where the stock bike loses control.
Yeah, it starts getting in it, it deflects, it doesn't work as good. When you go to the WP 6500 cartridge kit, it just takes it and it's ready to go for the next one. It's just a very superior system. You can make the stock stuff work, and if you're just an average trail rider, you're just out having fun, it's fantastic. The bike works great from the factory. You don't need to change anything. But if you're looking for that next level of something, having a good cartridge kit in there makes a big difference, right?
I think that's the biggest difference. This 2020 and newer stock suspension, if I'm in the back being sweep and I'm cruising, I like the stock suspension better for comfort. If I'm cruising, it is more plush and is very smooth riding. But when I get out in front and I start charging, it gets sketchy up front when you're charging. Whereas that stuff is amazing.
It just gives you the confidence to go faster. Suspension, we got that checked off. Now let's talk about power. And I've ridden some bikes that are tuned and have exhaust that are absolutely terrible. They're
horrifying. Too hard.
They're too fast. They're too much power. So once again, Bo's bike, stock 22 500 EXC, runs great. The 2020 and newer bikes, so 2020 to 2023 is what we're talking about essentially.
Right.
They are fantastic from the factory. They start well, they run well, they don't flame out. They are really good bikes. Yeah, so I had a 2017 500, and it had the notorious flame out issues that some of the older bikes had, which means you could be sitting at a stoplight getting ready to take off, and the bike's running perfect. You give it some gas, you take off into the intersection, and it just turns off on you.
Right.
The 2020 and newer bikes don't have that issue at all. They run good. They make a usable amount of power. They're fun. They're really good bikes from the factory. I've ridden bikes, like I said, that have reflashes from certain companies on them that are just too aggressive. They're made for a motocross track, not for enduro riding. What I have on my bike, I have some stuff from Takomoto Co. Mike and the boys over there do their own mapping. So I have a Get ECU. I have the Takomoto smog removal kit. It gets rid of some of the pumps and extra hoses and street legal stuff. So my bike's set up for off-road use only.
Right.
So you can't ride it on the street. Remember
Disclaimer.
that. Yep. And the way Mike maps his bikes, it's smooth, usable power. It's made to go out and run all day. It's not going to be so lean that it's getting hot. It's not going to be so aggressive that it's throwing you off the back of the bike. There's not some crazy hit. It's the stock bike just amplified a little bit. So that was kind of your fear getting on my bike at first. You thought it was going to be too aggressive.
Yeah, so I like the way the stock bikes run. I just wish it had more, right? My other buddies' 500s I've ridden that, remapped through different companies, different tuners, all that stuff. I did not like their 500s because it was an aggressive, like, motocross that, it hit hard. Which is what a lot of people think they want, is they're like, I want a hard hit, but then it's hard to ride.
Yeah, that's good for the track. I mean, if you just
Yeah.
want some oomph to get over a jump or something, that's what you need. And that's where a 450 is really good at, wants to rev versus the 500 wants to lug. And it's only 50cc difference, but it's a whole different feeling between those bikes.
Very different
so
bike.
You were a little skeptical getting on my bike. You weren't going to like the power. What'd you end up thinking?
It was perfect. It had this very smooth power delivery down low, like I like about the stock 500s. But then when you really want to get on it, get into the meat and potatoes, as we were calling it, it just gives you more in the mid to top end when you actually want full power, but down low when you're trying to finesse it, you're trying to lug it. It was very smooth, manageable. When you're in technical terrain, you're not fighting the bike. So I think it was perfect, and it was a smooth transition from little power to full power. It was a smooth transition the whole way.
Yeah, and I don't have a dyno chart of what it does or anything, but it feels like the stock bike just kicked up a notch. My bike still has the stock exhaust on it. I'm planning on changing to an FMF system down the road, the Q4 Quiet 4 system. But right now I have the stock header, and I have the stock muffler, and I have a end cap from Fastway Promoto billet, and I got that from Takomoto Co. as well. And what that end cap does, basically you take out the screws in the back of the stock muffler, and then you hammer it out, and it comes out, and it takes all the restrictive stuff out, and then Fastway makes their own end cap that goes in there. It's about $150. It's US Forest Service legal. It has a spark arrestor, and it opens the bike up so good.
And it sounds a lot better.
Yeah, it essentially, like I said, I'm not a dyno guy. I'm a feel of the bike. I'd say it runs probably as good as one of these aftermarket systems.
I'll have to compare that back to back. I don't know, but it definitely runs good.
No, the only thing, it doesn't have that sex appeal you get with like a nice FMF system with the Mega Bomb up front and everything.
Yeah.
It still is that kind of clunky, big OEM muffler that comes on the KTM bikes. It works great, but it just doesn't. It doesn't.
But if
hit
you're not
right.
looking at it, you sound the part.
And
you don't look the part, but you sound the part.
And it runs good. It gets the heat out of the bike. It's fantastic. So, power. Once again, I'm gonna go for my bike.
Yeah.
It's the stock bike just turned up a couple notches.
Yes.
I'm happy riding the stock engine. I'm happy riding the stock suspension, but I'm happier.
Just opens up. It doesn't change the characteristics of the bike. It just opens it up.
Yeah, just slight improvement there. So those are the two biggest characteristics we're talking about today, with suspension and power as far as modification. Both of our bikes, like we're calling his bike stock, but it does have nitro mousse front and rear. It has different tires front and rear. It has protective parts like an AXP skid plate. It has some bulletproof designs, radiator guards, things that I feel most people are going to put on their bike to make it safer, especially if you're out here riding in the rocks. Stock bike, they both have oversized Acherbys gas tanks on them for longer fuel range. They had Trail Tech GPSs, but his bike essentially stock, my bike modified. Let's get into, I don't want to say comfort, but let's call it controls, the points of contact.
Yes.
Your bike's running stock pegs.
Stock pegs, stock bars, even stock positions.
Yeah. So the stock pegs, depending on which KTM bike, Husky gas bike you buy. If you buy an SX or an XC, those are their motocross bikes, they come with a different peg than the off-road bikes come with. So the SX and the XC are one height. If you get a off-road bike like a XCW, or you get the street legal bikes, the EXC-Fs, the 500s we're both riding, the pegs are actually 5 millimeters higher than they are on the
Now,
XC and the
let's
SX.
clarify. The SXs aren't lowered 5 millimeters. They're standard height. And it's the XCWs that are actually raised 5 millimeters.
Correct.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when you go and buy an aftermarket peg for most of these companies, for instance, Fastway like I run, you can put them in the standard stock height position or down 5 and back 5. It basically flips the insert. But if you do that on a enduro bike like the EXC, XCWs, you're actually going down 10 and back 5. So I run mine in the high position, which is stock height, but that stock height's based on the SX and XC. So
Right.
while I have my pegs in the stock position, is actually 5 millimeters lower than they came on this bike, because
And that feels great.
yeah, it just opens it up. So I'm 6 foot. You're around the same.
5'11" and 3/4.
I'm 5'11" and 5/8. I call it 6 foot. We're rounding up today. So yeah, we just do that, and it drops the peg just a little bit. Doesn't move your weight back like you do if you put them in the low position, and it just makes the day a little longer. Your legs aren't so bent. When you stand up, I don't feel so high on the bike. Now, I know some shorter riders who love the higher pegs that come on the XCWs and EXCs. It's personal preference. So I'm also running, it's called the Evo EXT peg. It has a little finger that hangs off the back, and it's ankle saver technology. So as you get back on the peg, it gives you an extra little platform to stand on. It's just something I prefer. I think you guys might like it too. What'd you think of those pegs?
They're good for regular off-road stuff. In hard enduro, though, I'm not talking about that they get in the way of getting caught on rocks, but you can't drop your ankles far enough when you need a ton of off-road drive. Because I was bottoming out when I want to drop my ankles more when you're in rocky stuff. If you're not doing technical riding, I think that they don't get in the way at all, and they're there if you need them. So what we were doing yesterday, I think they were great.
So I felt the same way when I first got them. I was scared to try them for hard enduro, and now I run them for everything. I love those things. Let's move up from the peg to that Seat Concepts comfort seat on the bike. Now, the start of the day, it feels a little bigger. It feels a little cushionier. But by hour 11 and 12 yesterday, how was that stock seat treating you?
It's not that as big. I don't think that's as useful to me. I mean, it's like this. Hour 1 through 3, you don't tell a difference. Hours 4 to 7, you start liking that comfort seat. But then 8 to 12, my ass is numb. Doesn't matter what seat I'm on.
Yeah,
it helps. It helps a little bit. That one was that big of an improvement.
I think we're also built with a little bit of cushioning, and we squish down that stock seat foam.
Yeah.
For the little guys riding, they're the ones that always complain about the stock KTM 2x4 seat, they call it. They say it's so hard. I don't mind it. I've run the stock seat for years. This is my first Seat Concepts. I love the thing. It's super comfy. It looks good. It's grippy. You can get different colors to match your bike. But yeah, check out Seat Concepts. It's a fantastic thing. Let's talk about handlebars, because handlebars are a big preference. You have the stock XCW bars on your bike, and you have them in the back position, the stock position.
Standard position, which is back.
I run my bikes a little bit more open, so I flip the stock mounts and I move them to the forward hole, which gives the bike a little bit more open feeling. I also run the Kevin Windham Bend Pro Taper Evo bars. They're about 10 millimeters taller. I'm
not a fan of those.
Yeah, he didn't like them. It's personal preference. It's a handlebar, and it's going to be per rider. So moving on from handlebars, pegs, let's talk headlights. I don't do a whole lot of night riding, but when I do, having a headlight that works is a big thing. So on my KTM 300, my hard enduro bike, I'm not trying to add a giant light on there unless I'm going to go do a specific night ride. I run a little Baja Designs light. It's the Squadron. It's about $100 from Moto Minded on there. It's lightweight, and it's a huge improvement over the stock light, but it's not something you're going to go charge and run 50 miles an hour on. It's just a lightweight light. It works good. It's inexpensive, and it's a nice modification over the stock one. For our dual sport bikes, for the 500s we're both riding, you don't know when something's going to happen. Someone might get hurt. Someone might break a chain. You might spend too long at the bar, and you got to get home. And like yesterday, we didn't plan on being out for 12 hours, but stopping to get drone footage, stopping to talk about bikes, get extra pictures, lunch, adding on some different stuff, exploring.
Not starting until 10 a.m.
We wanted to sleep in. Dual sport ride, not racing. We're out there to enjoy the day.
Yeah.
So the headlight I have on my bike, it's from a company called Ruby Moto. It's the R7, and it's sold through Moto Minded and Takomoto Co. So you get the Ruby Moto headlight, the R7, and you get the surround that goes around it that adapts to the bike from Moto Minded. And that thing was a lifesaver yesterday.
Yeah, he told me to bring my aftermarket light, and I'm like, nah, I don't need it. The stock headlight works good enough. And because that's all I've ever really ridden with, except for races. But when we were out there trying to cover like we were 30, 40 miles an hour through rocky terrain, you know, and I found out real quick. I was like, the stock headlight is like a candle. Like, that was worth it.
It works. I mean, the stock headlight gets the bike to a street legal place for KTM, but at the same time, you start putting on a better headlight. You put on closed cartridge forks. You put on all these pieces that we're doing to the bike. That bike's going to go from 12.9 or whatever it sells for to $20,000 very quick, and not everybody needs that stuff. Like I said, you can get the smaller Baja Designs light. You can get a big XL Pro Baja Designs light that works fantastic as well. We're just running the Ruby Moto one here, but we were able to run. So he was essentially up ahead of me, and I was sitting just back, like on his front axle,
Like that.
Yeah, I got my microphone here. And I was able to run right next to him, and we're coming through pretty blown out trails, mud holes, rocks, logs, all sorts of stuff. And we're doing 40 to 50 miles an hour off one bike's headlight. This Ruby Moto R7 is fantastic. It's super bright, and it doesn't have any hot spots that some of the other brands have. So it's like a nice smooth light that goes throughout the entire range.
And like you were saying, braking and throttling, there's no beam like where it's light and not light. The whole thing was always light. Whether you're going up or down, it was always lit the whole time.
So I've been talking to Eric Waterfall, owner of Ruby Moto, quite a bit, and working with this light, and I believe what he does. So some of the other brands, basically they have one light and one housing, and then they change the lens that goes in front of it that changes how the light throws. And it can be nothing on the lens, which makes it throw further, or it can be a lens with some reflectors in it to make it close. His stuff is actually set up, and I forget the exact word he uses, but basically the lights are a different depth within the housing. The little reflectors in the back are open or closed to make the light work different. And what he's put together is just fantastic. So Ruby Moto R7 is just, it's amazing. Now, we didn't do a whole lot of high-speed riding. We were doing maybe 40, 50 miles an hour yesterday.
High speed for me.
How'd the brakes feel between your bike and my bike? Did you notice anything? No?
I know you have an oversized brake rotor, but I couldn't tell the difference.
So
I really couldn't. They both felt good.
For the faster stuff, I notice it slows down faster. Yeah, I've run a Galfer oversized wave rotor with the Galford centered pads on my bike. I love them. They're smooth, they're consistent. ASV levers, once again, stock bike. But for what we're doing yesterday, you don't really need that stuff. It's nice to have. I think I can notice a difference, but it's not going to make or break the day for you. It's nice having the ASV levers because they fold out. What are the ones you usually run? ARC?
ARC Memlons.
So he runs the plastic ones. I am not a fan. Like, I feel when I'm pulling the brake in, the lever's flexing and bending. I like a metal lever that is hinged, so that's just me personally.
I like the comfort on my finger that it flexes a little bit, so I'm not grabbing something hard metal the whole time.
I don't want my brake lever to move. I just want something standard. So what else do we got to cover? I had some other things on my bike from Takomoto, the low profile blinkers that don't break off.
Yep.
I have their tail light kit that doesn't come apart.
Yeah, I don't have a tail light because mine fell off somewhere in Mexico.
Yeah,
like literally.
The OEM stuff works good for dual sport riding and light stuff, but if you're going to hammer rocks and beat on it, it's a lot of weight hanging off the back, and they do over time start to fail. So Takomoto sells some really nice stuff. So I have a Takomoto LED tail light that has the turn signals integrated. So if you do set your bike over, there's nothing to hit the ground. They're not going to get ripped off by a tree. And then I have a moto-minded license plate mount that's actually 3D printed, and it's really flexy, so the plate can flex around if you hit something.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, so, my last license plate vibrated in half, broke in half just from the vibration of the bolts holding it on.
Yeah. So it's just little stuff like that. Yeah, it's just, you go on and on. We're both running Trail Tech GPSs on the bike. There's a lot of options out there, Garmin, Trail Tech. I've been working with Trail Tech for quite a while. I bought their stuff years ago, and they noticed my YouTube channel, and they've helped me out quite a bit. I'm happy with it. I wish it had turn-by-turn directions for street use, but is what it is. Maybe the next generation will have it.
I just love their big screen that's super easy to read day or night.
And it's touchscreen, it's easy, and it's great. I love the Trail Tech Voyager Pro. I've got a bunch of friends on them. We use the buddy tracking so we can see if the other person's moving. It's just a good setup.
Buddy tracking, you don't got to look over your shoulder to make sure they're there. You just look at the GPS. Oh, yeah, there they are right there.
And they're moving, has a little arrow. Gas tanks, we both have a Cherubies tanks. I have a 3.2 gallon, you have 4 gallon?
Like 394.
Yeah, so right around there, a little bit more range. I know on the White Rim Red we did was more dual sporty. I got 170 miles out of mine. What are you, 220, 240, something like that, probably?
I average, I think, 48 to 52 miles a gallon, so
a little under
200 plus.
Yeah, it's nice having a little bit larger tank, and they don't feel bigger. His is a little bit wider, being the 4-gallon. Mine's a 3.2, and mine feels the same width as the stock tank. So when you get on it, you don't have to worry about the bike being wider. It has that big, I'm going to call it an ugly thing at the top on both of them.
Big bulbous growth.
But you don't have to fill that up if you're doing a short ride. You can do half a tank, 3/4 a tank, and keep the weight down. So it's a nice option if you're going to get out and do longer stuff.
For oversized tanks, though, I love these. I mean, yeah, I know mine's bigger, but it still feels so much smaller. Then, like, you get the big 5.5-gallon tanks, you feel like you're carrying some weight.
All right, guys, we had to go inside and put the camera inside the freezer for a bit. It's 100 out here in Phoenix, and camera was in the sun, kept shutting off. So anyway, final thoughts. I mean, your stock bike versus mine, that's probably got another 3,000 in suspension and another $1,000 in tuning stuff, and it's got wheels and on and on and on. We didn't even mention, but what do you think?
So this is how I look at it. These specific upgrades that we tested, you're getting your money's worth out of them. You whatever you're spending on them, you're getting good performance out of it. Do you need them? No. On these 2020 and newer bikes, this is my thought. Like, if you're going out to have fun, you don't need this stuff to have fun. You don't need this stuff to ride well and comfortable. Now, do you want to get to the upper threshold of having the best headlights, the best suspensions? Like, it really does make a big improvement, these specific parts. Other stuff I tested, no, they may not be worth it. This stuff was worth it, but these bikes stock are so good. You can hammer stuff relatively fast. You can, you don't need to change these bikes very much to get really, really good performance. Yeah. If you have the money to spend and you're okay spending it, you will make a big improvement, but I don't think you need it.
No, I'm with you. The bike from the factory works great. If you want to go run fast stuff, if you're going to go to Mexico and you're going to be running a lot of 5th gear, suspension for sure, especially if you're a bigger guy like us.
Yeah.
Stock guy, you could probably get right away with it, but there's times where I hit some stuff on my bike at speed yesterday, and I think my suspension kept me from going down. I had some close calls riding your bike through some of the quicker sections, some G-outs and whatever, where we hit stuff and it hurt.
So it was fun on your suspension though. Like, there was some stuff I was going to hit, and I'm used to my bike. I'm like, oh, like you pucker up and you just boop boop and just float through. I'm like, that was fun to, like, I want to hit some other stuff faster just to see how well it takes it.
Schmidt Performance, Paris, California, does awesome work. He takes care of my suspension. You use a Ride Shop in Arizona, both really good suspension shops. It comes down to not just buying the right components, but having the right shop set the stuff up for you.
Oh yeah, that's the most important. It doesn't matter what fork you get. If they don't know what they're doing or they set up the wrong valving, it won't be any better.
If you don't want to spend the $1,300 on that cartridge kit, you can have the stuff revalved and resprung for about $800 for all the work, labor, parts, everything, depending on the shop. Obviously, some will price gouge you, and that'll make a good step in the right direction. It's not going to be the top of the line stuff that we're running, but it'll get you better than stock also. So there's levels. You don't have to do this, and this. Yeah, I'm with Bo. You can ride the stock bike out there. It's fantastic. It's a fantastic machine.
Oh, except for the headlight. That is a must if you do night riding.
Yeah.
That's an absolute must.
Ruby Moto, check that guy out. I love mine. What else you got? Good tires. The stock TKC 80s, they're fine if you're cruising on the street, but for off-road, you just put something real on there. Nitro mousses, so you don't get flats, or Michelin, whatever you want to run.
That's a must. Yeah. Screw air. I don't get flats for 7 years on my 15 PSI tubes. Screw them. Get tubes.
Yeah, you're going to ride rocks. If you live up in somewhere smooth and sandy, whatever, run air. I love the way air feels. It's great. But you're running around on sharp stuff and ledges and rocks and whatever. I don't have time. Then you don't have to carry a compressor. You don't have to carry tire levers. It just eliminates stuff on the body and makes the bike just...
And at one point we were boondocking and, like, we're going through... we're jumping over logs with pointy stuff, rocks, and we don't have to worry about it. We're just looking at GPS, trying not to fall. You don't got to worry where your tires are. You just hammer stuff. Don't worry about it.
It works really good. So, anyway, that's where I'm at. I'm with both. The stock bike, absolutely fantastic. Pick up a 20 or newer KTM 500. You can pick up a 17 and 19. They're great bikes. Also, you can pick up the older ones than that. They're all going to work good. It's just this new generation, the 20 to 23 bikes, they're fantastic. I love my bike. It's the best dual sport I've ever had. I'm happy with it.
Yeah, like my older, like 16, 17 bikes, like 15 to 70, like I had to do suspension, had to do work to them to, like, actually ride them on a week, just for a weekend ride. But the stock stuff, you don't need to change them to go for a nice weekend ride.
It's cool. And triple clamps. We're both on the stock cast triple clamps that come on the enduro bikes. I love them. I've bought the overpriced. Actually, I don't want to call them overpriced. I've bought X-Trid clamps. They're $600 or $700. I've run the KTM factory part clamps. And for fast riding, they're fantastic. They don't deflect, but for low speed technical stuff like this, the stock KTM cast clamps are so smooth.
Bike flexes more, it's smoother.
It's great. So anyway, guys, Travis every single Sunday, Bo from Ready to Ride Rentals. Check us out online, and any questions, drop them in the comments, hit that subscribe button, share the video around. Thanks so much. Have a good one.